Yeah, to start out, just a little bit about me. You know, as much as the outdoors has come to really define my life over the last decade, I didn't go on my first hike till I was about 20 years old. And a group of friends of mine put together this outing on a weekend out to the Superstition Mountains, just east of the valley here. And it's new territory for me. For them, it's just an average Saturday, but for me, I'm trudging uphill in this narrow rocky canyon. I don't know how I got here, don't know how I ended up here. And Peralta Canyon is the hike, and it really makes you earn it. You really got to huff and puff uphill. And you get out to the end, a spot called Fremont Saddle. And for them, like I said, it's average Saturday, so for them, it's kind of just the halfway point. But I get up there after focusing on my left and right foot for the whole 2 hour and a half, and you crest out at Fremont Saddle, and your view in an instant is to the horizon, just this craggy geologic chaos of tall, narrow peaks and rocky canyons. And they're just, having a snack and tightening their shoes. But for me, it's hitting something that I didn't know was there. And the best way I can describe it is just picture that your mind is a house. And you got a lot of rooms, and you're in and out of some rooms every day, and others are just storage, and others you kind of forget they're there entirely. So in my mind, there's this one of these back rooms has a gong, and it's just sitting there, and it's been gathering dust my whole life. And I get this view in an instant of this truly untamed wild space, and that just comes and picks up the mallet and just smashes the gong. And it shakes me to the core. And that's a shaking that has not stopped. I came back from that hike a different person, and I had the extreme fortune going forward from there to find myself on a path that I could share that feeling with people as a wilderness guide for many years. And guiding is a straightforward enough business, but particularly when you're guiding in the desert Southwest, you get these poor, innocent people that hop out of this van in this barren, hostile wasteland, and you are their rock in the ocean now. And particularly folks like first-time travelers from Canada or like New England, like they get out of the van and I'm like, bless your heart, strap in, we're going to Mars. And it is an alien world to them. And I get a million questions because I'm their guiding, terrible pun intended, guiding light. And there's the big standard questions. It's like, yes, there's snakes, and no, I don't think they want to eat you, and yes, that plant will stab you. And I used to look at the plant they're pointing at. I don't even look anymore because the answer is just yes, the plant will stab you. It's a blanket yes. As many questions as I get, though, I always have one that I throw back at them. And that question's been consistent over the years. And no matter where they come from, I ask them, so why Arizona? Why did you come here? Travel's affordable. It's easy these days. You really could have taken the time and gone anywhere in the world. So why'd you come to my neck of the woods? And as many answers as I've gotten over the years, there is one answer I got that I will never forget, and I cannot forget. So the setting of this trip is Grand Canyon. So Grand Canyon's obviously a spectacle in itself. And even the act of visiting Grand Canyon, I think, is somewhat spectacular because it is objectively this giant hole in the ground in the relative middle of nowhere, and very few people end up there by accident. Like, we all mean to go there. So how do you capture the essence of a place like that? Well, I think actually the author Wallace Stegner did it in a concise way. And Wallace Stegner once said, we simply need wild country available to us, even if we never do more than drive to the edge and look in. So at Grand Canyon, that's the ticket. They show up by the millions every year. They spend an average of 10-ish minutes looking in on the rim, and they pack up and go. That's it. But my job is for the people that's not enough. They got to sink their teeth into it. They have to get down inside that thing. So this trip starts like a lot of other trips. I got a nice, interesting group of diverse folks from all over the country. But right away, one of my guests stands out. So here's a little snapshot. This is Connie. So Connie is 54 years old. She's the director of a large healthcare network out east. She's recently divorced, and she just sent her two grown kids off to college. So Connie's initial reaction to Grand Canyon is silence. And that's not too uncommon. But that silence is always followed by the same statement, said one of two ways. The first way is this wide-eyed, "Oh my God, this is it." Or, "Oh my God, this is it?" Right? Thankfully, Connie's the first one, right? So this trip starts off and we're headed down South Kaibab. And we've got dust on our boots and the heart's pumping and the blood's flowing and everyone's starting to feel good and liven up. But Connie's initial silence persists. Everyone's livening up, but she's at the back of the group and she's by herself and she's quiet. And as little noise as she's making, I can hear and feel that gong shaking inside her. Because that was me all those years back at Fremont Saddle. So I know I got to keep eyes on Connie. So we're pushing on down South Kaibab, and everything's new and fresh to everyone, and you push on down past points like Ooh-Ah Point, which inspire wonder and awe, and you push a little further on past points with a name like Skeleton Point, which inspired dread and fear, because whose skeleton was it? And what happened to him? The sign doesn't say. And I've pitched it at the park for years. Just thereafter, I think they should have one more sign that just blankly says "Point of No Return." They don't listen to me, but I'd like it. I don't know. I'll pitch it after the story. But as you're going down South Kaibab, the landscape starts to transform around you. More of it reveals itself the more you get in. And as the landscape starts to transition, so too does Connie. She goes from being this quiet, lonely presence at the back of the group to pushing on up ahead, chatting to some of her fellow hikers, getting a little more lively, taking photos, at one point even pushing on ahead of the group to try to see what's around the next bend. So I sense an opening. I know I've got to pry a little bit. This is my opportunity. So I learn quite a bit about Connie. Not only is this her first trip to Grand Canyon, this is Connie's first hiking trip ever. So, evidently, Connie, when she goes big or stays home. And her whole life, she thought about the West and like the magic of the American West and the landscape, but never once in all her years took the time to come and see it for herself. So, we're pushing on down further. We've got miles of trail behind us. We're almost a mile inside of the earth. And it's the same every time. The temperature starts rising and your water supply is running low and your knees are by now demanding to know what they ever did to you that you could treat them like this. And you get on down into the inner gorge. And the inner gorge is this precipitous chasm of metamorphic rock. And the whole thing feels like a threshold, a transition. And you make your way down through that threshold into the heart of it. You find your way to Phantom Ranch. So if you've never been to Phantom Ranch, you got to set the scene in your mind. And the best way I've come up with to do it is take the most treasured, warm, nostalgic memories of summer camp as a child and transplant that into the heart of Grand Canyon. It is this totally unique union of human comfort and raw wilderness. And you've pushed through miles of trail, and you get down there, and you're lost in this world of rock and dust and color, and you kick off your hot boots, and you dip your feet in the icy cool water of Bright Angel Creek, and you sit in the shade of a cottonwood with the light filtering through the fluorescent green leaves. And if that wasn't enough for your senses, you saunter over the canteen, and you sip an ice-cold beer while you look at the thermometer. It says 125 degrees outside. In the very meaning of the word, it is magic. And that night, our group sits down in the canteen for dinner, and we share a common meal at a common table with people that were all there for the same purpose. And you settle into the deepest sleep that night that you'll probably find on this side of the hereafter. But the next morning, we're up early, because there's always more to see. So we push on up North Kaibab. We're going to a little spot off trail up there. And we got to cut across the creek, because there's a little falls that enters in over Phantom Creek and meets up with Bright Angel. And our group takes off their shoes, and you watch a group of adults taking their shoes off in a creek, and suddenly everyone's 8 years old again. And they skip across the creek and get up, and we find our way to the falls, cascading over these series of boulders. And Connie, for the first time in her life, stands with her arms splayed open and gets soaked to the bone in the clear waters of Phantom Creek. But there's still more to see. So the group starts to pack up, and we make our way back to North Kaibab, and I let them scoot on up the trail a little ways. But I noticed something. Connie's not up front. She's at the back again. I turn around and look at her, and as short as we've gone, the sun has baked us bone dry. But Connie's cheeks are soaked in tears that will not stop coming. And I go up to her. I just put my hand on her shoulder. I don't say anything at first. And I give her a minute, and I just ask her, Connie, where are you at right now? And she looks at me and she says, Brian, I just didn't know. And I say, you didn't know what, Connie? And she said, Brian, I didn't know there was anything this good in the entire world. So a few weeks later, email shows up in my inbox. It's Connie. Connie has sold her house, quit her job, and is moving out west. And what she describes as the first time in her life she made a decision to take care of herself. So to this day, I throw that question out to people. I ask them, why Arizona? Why come to a place like Grand Canyon? You could have gone anywhere in the world. Why do you come here? But now every time I ask that question, I think back on Connie, and I know why. Thank you.